वेलकम टू ऑडियो MBA थर्ड सेमेस्टर ह्यूमन रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट ट्रेनिंग एंड डेवलपमेंट का यूनिट 3 आखिर कहता क्या है। इसके पहले हम डिफिनीशन देखिए। द ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेस कंप्रोमाइज अ सीरीज ऑफ स्टेप दैट नीड्स to be followed systematically to have the efficient training program. The training system active perform to modify the skills, attitudes, and the behavior of an employee to perform a particular job. The training process consists of the well-planned step-by-step process, the scheduled that should be adopted while the deciding a training program. Training is an investment made by the organization with the objective of achieving some desired results. If the training is effective, then it can be very profitable for the organization. Training process: need assessment, setting objectives, designing, implementation, evaluations. ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेस क्या है? फिर डिफिनेशन ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेस का डिफिनेशन: द ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेस कंप्रोमाइजेज द सीरीज स्टेप that needs to follow the systematically to have an efficient training program. The training is a systematic activity performed to modify the skill, attitude, and the behavior of an employee to perform a particular job. Discover more: quality management, productivity, quality management, and communication. Training process: need of assessment. The first step in the training process is to assess the need of to training the employee. The need of training could be identified through a diagnosis of the present and the future challenges and through the gap between the implied and actual performance and the standard performance. The need assessment can be studied from the two perspectives, individual and the group. The individual training designed to enhance the individual efficiency when not to perform adequately, and whereas the group of training intended to inculcate the new changes in the employee due to the change in organization strategy. Driving instruction: the objective: once the need are identified, the objective for which the training is to be conducted are established. The objective could be based on the gaps seen in the training program and conducted earlier and the skill set developed by the employee. Designing training program: the next step is to design the training program in line with the set objective. Every training programs encompasses certain issues such as who are the trainers, what methods are to be used for the training, what will be the level of training, etc. Also the comprehensive action plan design that includes the training content and material, learning theories and instruction designs, and the other training requests. The implementation of the training program: once the designing of the training programs is completed, the next step is to put it into the action. The foremost decision that needs to be made is where the training will be conducted, either in the house or outside the organization. Once it is decided, the time of the for the training is set along with the trainer who will be conducted the training session. Also, trainees are monitored continuously throughout the training programs to see if it is effective and is able to retain the employees' interest. Evaluation of the training programs: after the training is done, the employees are asked to give their feedback on their training session and whether they are felt useful or not. Through the feedback, an organization can determine the weak spot, if any, and can rectify in the next session. The evaluation of the training program is the must because the company invests the hug amount in those seasons and must know the effectiveness in terms of money. In HR human resource management training, instructions objectives are the clear and smart and specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound goals, starting what the employees will do after the training, apply safety and procedure, characterized by the cognitive mind and affective emotional attitude and the psychometer, physical skill dominant, while lesson planning is the blueprint using these objectives to structure activity, resources, and assessment like the Bloom's taxonomy for the cognitive levels for the effective delivery, ensuring the alignment for the organ- organizational goals and individual development. Instructional objective in the HRM definition: a specific observable statement of the desired learning outcome focus on behaviors, knowledge, or skills implies gain. A smart criteria objective must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Dominance: Bloom's taxonomy, conjunctive thinking skill, and remembering, the understanding, the applying, analyzing, and evolution, creating affect the attitudes, values, and the emotion. Example: motivation, empathy, psychomotor, physical skills. Example: the operating machinery perform a task. Component Audience, action, verb, and observable condition extend the instructional objectives, also called the learning objectives, are the statements which define the learning result. One of the principles of well-written objective is that is must define the result of learning. And instructional objectives are divided into the three categories: and cognitive objectives, affective the objectives, and the psychomotor objectives. You have to remember that the cognitive objective and the concentrate on mind, affect the objective and concentrate on emotional, and the psychomotor objective concern on the on body. What are the descriptions of all these categories of the instructions? Objective, cognitive objective. These objectives call for the outcome of the physiological activities like learning, understanding, and the problem solving, evolution, and the making the interference. They are the further category into the various levels, from the modest cognitive tasks to the most difficult cognitive tasks. These categories help when you are trying to order the ideas so they are successfully suitable. Affective objectives mainly focus on emotion. Every time an individual process to learn the response in a suitable way where there are some thought going on. The main difference between the affective objective and the cognitive objective is that the aim of affective objectives is a kind of affective behavior or the product of emotional impact, while on the other hand the aim of cognitive objective is some kind of cognitive reactions or the product of a cognitive reactions. Psychomotor objective, this kind of objective focus on the control of or handling of the well developed skeleton method or the some part of it. All skill that need the satisfactory or the gross motor synchronization fall into the on this category. You require some combination to adopt a motor skill and the knowledge. However, the eventually aim is not to cognitive characteristics of the skills like the learning. The step to ultimate aim is to control of mucilus and muscular group. लेसन प्लानिंग इन HRM. व्हाट यू लेसन प्लानिंग इन HRM क्या होता है? पहला ब्लूप्रिंट, ए डिटेल गाइड फॉर द ट्रेनर एंड द आउटलाइन एक्टिविटीज, एक्टिविटी टाइमिंग, मटेरियल एंड द डिलीवरी मेथड फॉर द स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग टू की एलिमेंट का ऑब्जेक्टिव द फाउंडेशन ड्यूरिंग द कंटेंट सब्जेक्ट ऑन व्हाट टू टीच, एक्टिविटी हाउ लर्नर्स will engage, discussion, role play, and exercise, resource material and handout, technology, assessment, how to check if objective were met, quizzes, performance, and the reviews, time allocation, budgeting time to for the each segment, role in HRM training, ensuring the training is structured, efficient, and directly contribute to imply the growth and organization success. Example: onboarding, compliance, skill development. Key component of an HRM lesson plan. Title description, the clear engaging the title. Example: strategic requirement and conceptual overview. Learning objective, specific markable skills, and the participants will gain. Example: define HRM, implement, and the selection technique. Target audience, who the training for the example new manager, HR, and the generalist. Duration and the scheduled. Total time and the breakdown. Example: 4 hours, 4 weeks. Contain the outline and the modules. The topic HR planning, comprehensions of ER activities and the method. Lecture, case study, and the stimulations and discussions. Role playing, the group work or guest speakers. Material and the resources. Textbooks, handout, case files, and HRS example equipment. Assessment, quizzes, assignment, and the presentations. Final exams observation. Common HRM topics covered: introduction to the HRM scope, evolution and the role, human resource planning, forecasting gap, requirement and the selection, sourcing, interview, induction, training and the development method, and need analysis, performance and the management and appraisals. Compensation and the benefit imply the relations and industrial relations, strategic HRM and HRS. Example: lesson plan flow the 5-phase model. Engage, introduction, concept. Example: what is HRA? Explore the activity. Example: thick pair, share, or the resource, the case study. Explain the teacher, clarify the definition rule. Elaboration, apply the concept. Example: identify the HR function in another company. Evaluation, review the understanding. Example: reflective response, mind map. Lesson planning, goal, action, demonstration, learning, and involvement. Goal क्या? What do you want a student to be able to do, know, understand by the end of the class? And action क्या? How are you going to break down the substance of the lessons to help the student reach the goal? Demonstrate learning क्या? How will you and your student know if they have achieved the goals. Environment, what do you physically need to do and facilitate the learning. Whether you the lesson plans are detailed multi-page document submitted to your administration each week, they are must post. If the notes with the consist the bullet point, the effective lessons planning require the strategy and the interest. Great lessons need clear direction, purpose, and the pacing the solid pedagogy. On the side note, if you are looking for engaging the step-by-step lesson plan for the ELA classroom, especially for the sub plans, check out by ILA lessons and the bundle with over the 60 individual plans. While planning such a successful, well-planned and the dynamic lessons takes the time think of all those observation lessons. If you get into the strong habit of working through a few key steps, if it simplifies the whole process. As with all the habit, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Soon you internalize the steps and find yourself doing them without the even realize it. Below are the four simple steps. GADE. I go grade. I go through in my mind every time and I plan a lesson to always write them out in details. No, do you still work through even them as a plan? Goals क्या है? The most effective way to plan route for a journey is to start with a knowledge where you are trying to get to right instruction is the most effective when you and your student have a firm idea of the goal. When they know what they are working towards, the lesson if is far more purposeful. Your goal should be able to express in a single sentences or to the more focus. It is the easier. It is the students. It is for the student to digest, understand. I even suggest the writing this on the board and start the lesson for the student to be able to see the reference example of the goals. Student will understand the impact of verifying the sentences patterns in the term of catering tones. Having read chapter 5, the great stated by the student will be able to explain how and the author develop a characters in a narrative through the use of indirect characterization. A student will be able to effectively back up their thoughts and idea with the appropriate textual evidence. Action क्या है? This is the nuts and the bolts of the lessons, the lecture, activity, exercise, etc. Ask yourself what are the most effective methods to help the guide students to the goals. A lecture, group of discussion, a reading exercise, worksheet, practice, a video, a writing exercise, a station work. The key here is the breaking the lesson down into the very manageable chunks. Really should be you plan a 60-minute lesson, you just a single activity. You want to think about the dividing the class of into the 10 to 20 minute segments with varied activity and the modes of learning, all geared towards the overall goals. Demonstrations of learning. It does not always have to be a large assessment task that would be the perhaps with a unit goal. However, you should be able to place a small milestone in every lesson to assess whether or not students are gaining knowledge or developing their skills, and this need to be the international. It may be the summative assessment and the task, but in the daily lesson it would be likely to be formative assessment. This should be the conclusion conscious decision when the planning the lessons. Example of opportunity for the demonstration of learning. A ask strategy is questioning how do you know that why did you write that. Use exit slips. Have a student pursue the sometimes which require them to use what they have learned. Enemy skill and the class polls or the quizzes or katos, self-reflections or the evaluations. Environment in elements. Once you know the purpose of the lesson and have the firm understanding of the activities and the elements of the lesson, think about what you need to prepare. While this might be the gathering resources and the photocopy, finding the passages, etc. It is also should be about the space of the classroom, how the best to facilitate the most effective lessons for your purpose. Think about the desk layout, the visual displays and the seating arrangement, etc. Example of environment elements. Move the desks into the group, pair, individual, etc. Print layout and organize materials. Have a specific strong pen which relates to the lesson for when the student enter. Create the spaces around the room for the station work, for gallery work, etc. What is the contextual learning? Contextual learning is a approach to learning that emphasizes the importance of understanding information and skills within a specific context or the real world setting. It recognizes that learning is enhanced when the learners can relate and apply the knowledge to practical situations. Contextual learning promotes the active engagement and problem solving and the critical thinking by providing the learners with the relevant and meaningful experience. It goes beyond the rote memorization and the focus on the integration of the knowledge and skills into the authentic tasks and the scenarios. By the connecting the learning to real life context, the contextual learning helps the learner develop a deep understanding, make the connections and the transfer their knowledge and skill to new situations effectively. Context specific learning or contextual learning is an educational approach where new information and the skills are taught within the real world situation or the relevant scenario, helping the learner see the why and the how, making the learning more meaningful, sticky, and applicable to the life and the work. Rather than the just abstract the theory, it uses the example simulations and problem solving to connect the knowledge to the personal experience and the future application, boosting the motivation and the retention. Key principle relevance learning is tied to the practical real life situation application focus on the using the knowledge immediately, not just the knowledge knowing fact. Engagement actively involves the learners is in the activities like the case studies, experiment, and the project. Meaning making helps the learners connect to new information to their existing knowledge and the frames to reference how it works. Start with the context, present the real world problem scenario first, introduce skills, teach the necessary skills and the knowledge to address that context, practice, apply, engage the learners in the activities, simulations, experience, and debates where they are use the new knowledge transfers, enable the student to apply this learning to other life situations or the future professions, benefit, increase the motivations. Increase the motive learner understand the purpose behind that they are learning, better retention, context as the glue for the long-term memory, a seamless transition bridge the gap between the education and the workplace. Deeper understanding moves beyond the rote memorization to the true comprehension. Example in the practice, science learning physics through the building a working model instead of the just equation. Training teaching software by having the employees solve the realistic customer service tickets. Classroom using the newspaper articles and the debates on the current events. Teach the social study hierarchy of the learning. A hierarchy of learning must famously defined by the Robert Genge and arrange the learning type from the simple to complex, starting the mastering the lower level of necessary for the higher one, starting with the basic reactions, single stimulus response, moving through the chains and the association, chaining verbal association them to concept of discrimination, concept learning, principle, rule learning, and finally the highest level problem solving where the learners apply the rules to new situations. Learning hierarchy learning visual, auditory, vestibular, proprioceptions, tactical. Unit 3, a strong foundation built on each level of creates the learning within the child. Visual system information of a child projects through their eyes. Auditory information a child projects through their ears. Coordinations and the child head, eyes, and the balance and equilibrium. Tactical children learn through the touch. Proprioception child awareness of a body positions. The second form of association is the stimulus response learning, in which we learn to change our response by the discriminating between the stimuli. For example, in the above scenario, the Rahul stopped at the signal when it turned red and started walking when it turned green. The means the Rahul responded different stimuli. We learn to respond in a particular way by being rewarded by getting the favorable result. This somewhat where the sophisticated from the learning, it is also known as operant conditioning, was originally developed by the Skinner. It involves developing the desired stimulus response bond in the subject through a careful planned reinforcement schedules based on the use of rewards and the punishment. And operant conditional differs from the classical condition in that reinforcing agent reward or punishment is the presented after the response. This type of condition forms the basic program learning in all the various manifestations. Challenging it is the process of connecting together a number of learned responses into the sequence. Gang describes the two kind of the changing. The first is the motor changing learning skills, and the such as the riding a bike, and the second is a verbal changing route and the learning and the regulation or the seeing or the timetable variable changing is one of the key process of the development of the language skills. These kinds of the learning are the basic one basic ones, and therefore appear at the bottom of the hierarchy, but they are the type that we engage in all the time, and so can occur alongside the other kind of learning future for their hierarchy. And the Gange argue that the kind of learning lower down in the hierarchy form of the par- parachutes for the kind of learning further up to the hierarchy. What is discrimination learning? The next type of learning is the hierarchy discrimination learning. This is the process in which we learn to discriminate between the similar phenomena. The stimuli may respond each other but we learn to identify the different response and the different one, so we can learn the distinguish between the square and the rectangle concept. Learning this type of learning is describes the ability to classify and link together the similar phenomena and the phenomenon occurrence. This involves developing the ability to make the consistent responses to different stimuli that form a common class category of the some sort. It forms the basic ability to generalize the classify the individual and the friend are individual phenomena, and the friendship is a concept. Gang break concept learning into the two stages. The first is the concentrate the concept of learning, in which we learn to form a concept based on the direct observation of the phenomenon in the world around us. So we observe the points and where the form the concept of circular, define the concept of learning. The second stage define the concept of learning, in which we learn the arise and abstract the concept. Example abstract concept are the cousin or the city or the just. We cannot arrive the concept of cousin simple by the observing the number of cousins. We need to compose the definition that they explain what makes these people cousins. Rule learning describes the ability to respond to a class to stimuli with the class of performance. This is a very high level of a cognitive process that involves being able to learn the relationship between concept and apply this relationship in the different situations, including the situation not previously encouraged at. It forms the basic of the learning of general rules and the procedures, etc. An example of the rules learning would be when we can demonstrate the ability to write the nouns in the plural for the gang. Therefore a rule allows us to behave in the consistent or a regular way in the face of the variety of events or phenomena. Collapse learning cycle. Learning can be defined as the acquisition of the abstract concept that can be applied in the real life situation. Experience play an important role in this learning process. The learning cycle of the curves was developed in 1984 by David Kolb, and the show how the effective experimental learning process can be designed. The cycle consists of the four steps: the concentrated learning, experience, feeling, reflective observation, watching, abstract conceptualization, thinking, active experimental doing. Concentrate experience doing, having an experience. Reflective observation, review the reflecting on the experience. Active experimentation, planning and trying out what you have learned. Abstraction conceptualization, and the concluding the learning from the experience. So experimental learning and the model David Kolb 1983. From the diagram we can and state that there are the four aspects to the model which are explained below. Concentrate experience. It is the part of the model the learner have a new experience, say For the example, using the machine or a tool or going to a new places in the first time. When the person use the tools or visit a new place, he has consulted the experience, and that gets a foundation for the substitute process. Reflective observation. After the experience, the process reflect on the experience and tries to understand the differences between his or her prior. Reflective observation क्या होता है? After the experience, the person reflect on the experience and try to understand the difference between the his or her prior understanding of the subject. For example, if the person has heard the great things about the destination but has a contrasts the experiences, then he or she makes those observations and the calls or the labels those experiences as better. Abstract conceptualization. After the reflecting or observing on the matter deeply, the learner comes up with the new ideas. So in our example, the person may choose new to visit that destinations or choose another destination or start his or her level traveler agency. Active experimentation. After the forming the new ideas, the person actively works on the idea. So in the example, the learners may travel to the new places or they start his own travel agency, or even they develop an app that helps other travelers make the informed choice. Why we use the learning cycles? Using the COPS models for observing, for designing a course focus forces you to design the activity according to the step in the learning cycle. This is the powerful because it addresses the different learning styles, and the people are very different in their learning style. Cops describes for the dominant styles, which are always a combination of the two learning preferences in the two dimensions: feeling versus and the thinking, and the watching versus doing. Sources: experimental learning model and the David Cobb's 93. Every learners will score the differently on these two important dimensions. The diverging learning style combining watch and feel the people with this style what are the good at idea generations and the brainstorming. They have the board and interest are often minded and like to work in group. The assimilating learning style combining which are watch and think. People with this style like the structures clear and the explanation and has a logical approach. They are interested in the concept ideas and the models. They like the lectures and the readings. The converging learning style and combining doing and the thinking. People with this style and the practical and are the focused on solving problem. They are the technical and the application oriented. The accommodating learning style combining the feeling and the doing. The people with this style are the hands and on and very intuitive. They like the challenge and the experimental approach based on gut feeling. In the course they are always be variety of the people prefer the learning style. Designing a course with the learning cycle of the course will create the effective learning environment for all styles. The learning cycle at in changing in designing the course with the business games and the creative in change the course learning cycle is a powerful model. Below we explain all the steps and how they work in our business stimulations games. The first step, the concentrate the learning experience can be around in the business stimulations game where a team of four analyzes the situations in the virtual company. The action for the next round are the discuss and decide. The second step is to debrief on the result of the round. After the calculating the result in the debrief, we reflect together with the learners what has happened in the round. Short term presentation can complete the debrief. The third step is to explain the new theoretical concept. The fourth step is an exercise or a group work to apply the new concept of the stimulation environment. After this the learn after this the team is ready for the next learning cycle, starting again with the round of discussions in the business game. Training is a typical designed to go through the cycle 3 to 6 times. Every cycle a new topic learning. The objective can highlight a new round in the business game will be played, learning from each other in the micro cycle. As explained the magic circuit, the principle of the gaining is simulations by the J.H. Cobbler's 2009. In this In this game approach, we have two learning the cycles, the macro and the micro cycle. The macro cycle is in the curve learning cycles as described above, but there are also another one to micro cycle. The micro cycle occurs during the experience within the business and simulation game, and within the team you play the game within this microcycle. The team members play around in the business game. The cycle consists again of four steps: action, sense making, formation, and the adjustment of achieving the mental models, adjusting your priorities of actions. Incorporation learning principles, and incorporation learning principles means the using the research and backward strategy to make the teaching and the learning more effective. Focus on engaging the learners, connecting new information to the prior knowledge, promoting the active participation, providing the clear goals, offering the timely feedback, and respecting the diverse needs of foreign and fostering the self directionless, especially for adults which need to see the relevance and control. The key action involve the chunking information using the problem solving and encouraging the discussion and aligning the activity within the objective for the better understanding and retention. Core learning principles, how to apply them. Prior knowledge, link new content to what the learners already know. The application asks the learner to share the experience, use the language, and the build on existing understanding. Knowledge organization, how the knowledge is structured, affect and learning applications. Present information logically break the complex topics into the smaller chunks and chunking the show connections. Motivation, learners are driven by the relevance and the goals. Application, example why sometimes is important so the real world application make it the problem center. Engagement and active learning. Learning improves with the active participation. Application use the discussions, case studies and role playing and hand-on practice instead of just lecture. Practice feedback, goal directed practice with the feedback builds mastery. Application provide the immediate, specific, and the constructive feedback. Design tasks that require the applying skills. Self-directed learning, learners need to monitor and adjust their own learning. Application empower learners to take the ownership, set goals, and reflect on their progress. Environment and the respect, a supportive climate enhance the learning. Application create a safe space and respect the diverse talent and the foster collaboration. Practical strategies for the implementations, and ensure the activity assessment and objective match, contextualize, use the real life scenario. Very methods use diverse activity for the different learning style. Encourage the collaborations, facilitate the group work and sharing. Be clear communication, high expectation, and the learning goals. Feedback क्या होता है? In the training of development, the crucial process crucial process of the giving and the getting the information to improve skills, programs, and performance, acting as a bridge between the learning theory and the real world application by the highlighting the strength, identify the weakness, boosting motivation, and the aligns the training with the business goal. It helps the learners grow, allows to the trainers to assess the method and ensure the training stay relevant and the effective using the mechanisms like the survey, assessment, the 360-degree review and review for the continuous improvement. What is the feedback and the role of feedback? In the general, feedback is the information about the someone performance or the behavior to guide the future improvement. It is a critical mechanization in the various contexts such as education, the workplace, and the personal development, etc. Feedback can be positive and reinforcing desired the behavior, performance, or the negative constructive highlighting the area for improvement and the suggesting the ways to achieve the better outcomes. General tips for the feedback: timed, not every moment is appropriate. Timely, soon after. Consequence, concise, not too much information. Frequent, to golden middle. Private, to not everybody has here. Educate, not all the people have the same needs. Why feedback is essential? Enhancing the learning helps the learner understand what they have grasped and where they need to the focus, making them more competent and confident. Improving the training, allow the L&D teams to refine the content and delivery and the method for the future sessions. Boost motivation, constructive feedback motivate the participants and encourage them to apply new skills. What is derive performance? Connect the individual skill development and organizational objective leading to the better business result. Key elements of the effective feedback: timely given as soon as possible after the learning event to link the action to outcome. What is specific actionable, clearly to point out what to improve and how constructive, respectful, focusfully on the growth, not just the evaluation. Multi-directional comes to the trainer, peers, and the self-reflection, how it gathered, survey and the coaching. Post-training forms the asking about the engagement, relevance and the style. Assessment and the quiz, measuring the knowledge gain. Performance appraisal, linking the training outcome to job performance. 360-degree feedback, getting the insight for the multiple sources. Supervises the peer subordinate. Function of the feedback: the role of feedback is to drive the learning, growth and the improvement by providing the insight into the performance, behavior and impact, the ensuring the alignment with the goals, fostering the self-awareness, building the trust and the enabling the course correction in the communication, work and the personal development. It acts as a compass, the guiding individual and the team to identify the strength, address weakness and the adapt for the better result, making it is essential for the effective communication and the continuous progress in any system. Key role of feedback: performance and the goal alignment, aligns individual efforts with the organizational objective, motivating the better performance and strategic goals achievement. What is learning and the skill development, highlighting the strength to reinforce and the weakness to improve, the guiding skill enhancement and the career planning. What is communication and understanding, confirm if the message are received and as intended and making it core part of effective two-way communication, not just one-way information. Motivation and engagement, positive feedback encourages the continuation of the good work, while constructive criticism motivation positive change and effort. What is self-awareness and growth mindset, helps the individual see themselves as a order to identify the blind spots and develop a stronger growth mindset. What is problem solving adaptation, identify the issues early and prevent the major roadblock and helps to come to adapt to changing environments. Trust and culture building, when delivered constructively in it fosters honesty, transparency and the supportive culture, say indeed from indeed.com uk. What is practice in timing, assessment method of customize the content and motivate the participant, notes and the talents. So in writing can help the writing understand the reader receptions and the refine their work according to the royal literacy fund. What is presentation, inform the speaker how the message is received and enabling better delivery notes. What is principle of effective feedback, if you are organizing and teaching the managers and implies how to give the effective feedback in the workplace at the workshop, you can use these principles as a classroom discussion activity. You can talk through each principle and even give a real world constructive feedback examples for the employees, and then ask the participants also for their own example to get them more engaged in the activity. Be specific when the giving feedback. Let's look at the scenario in the workplace as one example of imagine you say to Tom, I concerned about your work. How would Tom feel? Maybe the worried and confused. What could you say instead? You could say, Tom, I am worried because yesterday you were late from the meeting and you had not finished the report. This held the team back. You need to finish the report by 4 p.m. and send it to the team. The later example is for the better because it is specific and the leaves no room is for the misunderstanding. It provides the clarify as to what the issue is. Focus on observe behavior. In order to feedback the effective, you need to base your feedback and observation rather than interference. An objective is the sometimes you can see occurs. An interference refers to an assumptions or a guess that lack the real evidence. Observe the behavior that you can certain definitely took place, provide a much more reliable basis on which to give the feedback. More on observation and interference here in the case interested. Keep it interpersonal. Feedback will help be improved. It focus on tasks rather than personality. For example, instead of calling an employee lazy, will say that they will not deliver on the time. On rather than telling the employee that they are terribly organized, you might want to provide them with a task that helps them to be to become the better organized. Link feedback to goals. Linking feedback to an employee performance and job goals to keep it relevant is also a great idea. Goals in the action provide a great way to you to provide the feedback without it sounding out of place or in some way random. If you are manager, for the example, you are due to do an annual review or the PDR performance and the development review, and what a great time to mention to set new goals for the Jimmy. If Jimmy has performing badly in his role, prioritize with the points to provide the feedback on. This point applies mainly to performance the management and as a part of a development plan. When dealing with an employee who perform poorly, you may be the tempted to the try and correct everything as try thing that is wrong at the same time. Look at their job description and see what their the top priorities are. For example, if the employee is a receptionist in a beauty salon, their main goal may be greet the customer politely and check them in. Other goals maybe include the recording appropriate, answering the phone, sorting out income and outgoing mail, and watering the plant in the waiting room. Greeting the checking the customer would be the first, probably followed by the recording appointments, then answering the phone, then sorting the mail, and watering the plans would be the last. If you try and give too much feedback at once, the employee will feel the defensive and will stop the listening. So within the receptionist, first focus on making the sure they check in the customer properly, and then gradually try to fix any problem related to the other tasks in order to priority. For instance, do you remember what you ate for the lunch Monday last week? Chances you have forgotten. If it is the same for the other events, employee will forget what they did in the past. Not only that, the research show that we are better in remembering the good things what did than the bad things we did. We tend to forget or destroy the events that are unfavorable to us. So while you might remember everything clearly as you have been mulling the events over and over, your employee will have forgotten and what will then everything. For example, an employee always interrupts the people when they are taking during the meeting. This is a behavior that you have noticed over the time. During the series of the meetings, the best time to give them the feedback is the soon as the latest meeting has ended, so you can provide them with the example of their behavior that can remember. You may not want to give them the feedback in front of the everyone as it could be the humiliating, so you need to take the employees aside for a minute and give them feedback. If there is no time after the meeting, you can set up the short meeting with them. The first thing in the morning, the day after the sometimes it is easier to give the feedback and state away such as such as when we give the positive feedback, give a brief information. Other times you may have the way, such as if you want to avoid the giving the feedback in front of other people, you give if you are angry, upset, and to give you time to calm down, or if you need to time to plan and prepare so you don't say the wrong thing. In any case, try to give the feedback as soon as you can. Ensure that the feedback you give is understand. When giving feedback, never assume that the other persons has understand everything in the same way as you want them to understand. Misunderstanding and the distortions or information are very common. Even when we think we communicated clearly, it may be that the point of view of the other person distorted their understanding. This is particularly common when we receive the criticism as the first. We might not want to accept it, or it may be the person of distracted, or they you did not communicate the clearly enough. So after you have given your feedback, ask the other person to summarize the main point and repeat them to you. Ask potentially so they do not feel prioritized or tested. For instance, you could say that you just want to make sure you are the same page. If they misrepresent any of the point, let them know what the missing, they clarify what the mispresented. Make sure the suggestion you provide the controllable. Before the giving the feedback, make sure that the employee can control what happened. For example, if an employee interrupts the colleagues while they talk at the meetings, they are completely in control of changing their behavior. In the future, they are wait for the other person to finish the speaking and then intervene. If the employee is always late because the traffic, they are controlled because they can leave their house earlier. If the traffic is always that bad, if the traffic was bad only once because of an accident of the road, if the employee is late, it is out of their control as they could not predict this event. So if so it would be unfair if you blamed the employee for being late. In this case, there are the time when it is less obvious to see who is in control. For example, a sales representative goes to set at least 20 units a month of a product. Then a manager changes a goal at least 30 units per month and does not tell the employees. The following month, the sales representative missed the goal as they only sold 25 units. However, as far as they are concerned, they hit their target as they true. It was the 20 per month. If then the manager criticized, then who is at the fault? In this case, it is the manager's fault or not telling the employee about the change in target. The control was not longer in the employee's hand because they did not know about the new scales target. So when you give the feedback, first make sure that the employee is in the control and that the problem is not sometimes else or the managers can be often be the problem if they do not make sure that the employees has access to resources needed to their job, has been given the clear goals, have been trained appropriately, and has a support not only from the manager but also from their peers. If the manager responsibility to make sure that the employee has all these things. When you give the feedback, you are aware that not everything is in the employee's control. Acknowledges it. The idea of the control applies also when the giving the positive feedback. If a person achieves the something by luck or for the example rather than as a result of their efforts, the feedback will not be effective in the boosting their morale. Make the feedback constructive. This apply the particularly to redirection feedback, and it means that you need to make the feedback actionable. So give the suggestion on what could be done to change the behavior. Listen to the employee idea and then agree on a way form. Then take a look at the post I also did on how to give the constructive feedback. Tailor the feedback especially of the employee. Tailor the feedback to the employee and the employee's performance and the how long they have been with the company. This will give the more depth of a meaning to the feedback you as the seen in the employee. Principle of feedback delivery. A specific behavior. Focus on observable actions and the concerted examples. Example, when an example explained X, the group of seemed confused rather than the board judgment. Example, you are unclear. Timely the delivery feedback as a close to the event possible when while it is still fresh the learner's mind. Actionable goals oriented. Provide the clear controllable step for the improvement and the linking them to learners overall development goals. A smart goal. Balance the constructive. Mix positive reinforcement with the area for improvement to maintain the motivation. Use phrases like area for the opportunity. Way of collaboration include the active listening, self-assessment, and the dialogue. Don't just talk at the training. In impersonal and non-judgment. Keep it the focus on the performance impact, not personally, to reduce the defensive. Private appropriate setting. Conduct the feedback session in the safe, private, and the distractions-free environment. Building a strong feedback culture. Transparency and expectations clearly define what good performance looks like. Regular intervals make the feedback and continuous process, not to surprise event, embedding it into the daily interaction. Trainer and the training. Equip training with the skill to give the recessive feedback effectively and the modeling the behavior themselves. Focus on growth. Foster mindset that view the feedback as the tool for the learning and the development, not just the evaluation. Component and the effective feedback. Providing the effective feedback is an interactive intricate process like require the skilled practice and the graceful executions. If executed properly, effective feedback can have a major impact on efficiency of the workplace, employee engagement, and the bottom line. It is therefore imperative that managers develop the comprehensive understanding of what the constitutes effective feedback to impact the employees and improve the learning process. In the end, it is essential for the manager to understand that each employee comes from the unique perspective, and that every work interaction comes out with the point of view. Providing feedback the right way not only the makes it more effective and implies but also fosters kindness and create an environment teachability within your company. Better communication with the employees through the effective feedback leads to better employee engagement, which in turn the improve the company wide relationship with customers. According to a LinkedIn articles giving the effective feedback, the benefit of effective feedback start with engagement. When people get good quality feedback and the guidance for their leaders, they can feel the more engaged with their roles, values by their leaders, and more included as part of them. What is effective feedback? Effective feedback provides the employee with an valuable and corrective information to enhance the performance. It can be the positive and negative feedback focusing on the specific behaviors or the situation. Effective feedback contributes to continuous improvement and the growth in the workplace by offering the constructive guidance. In order to effective feedback must be specific. Feedback must be concentrated and relate to a specific measurable performance goals. It should be also include the clear expectation for the employee and their performance. The employee progress and performance should be readily available in clear, easy to understand the format. It is a good practice to map out these performance goals and the proactively before the need for the giving the constructive feedback even the arise timely. Employee must be receiving the feedback as close to the event as a possible. Employee who interact with the customer over the phone should be the monitor and the provided the immediate feedback once the call has finished. Additionally, the real-time metrics that are the readily available to the employee in a dashboard can be very effective as they provide immediate helpful feedback about the performance. Giving feedback soon after the event facilitate the greater learning and the leads to better employee performance. What is appropriate feedback should be the presented in a positive, tactful, and the non-threatening manner. The employee providing the feedback should remain and claim and the professional throughout the process. Although the negative feedback is both necessary and helpful, it should be given in the private first and the foremost. Any feedback needs to the respect and build up the employees without the running the risk of causing the embarrassment or shame in front of peers. Focus on behavior, not personality. Always provide the feedback that is based on the behavior, not the employee's personality, the characteristic, unless absolutely necessary. Employees are more open to receiving the feedback about the impact of their behavior on the performance than they are about their personal characteristic. In fact, the providing the critical comments about and imply the personality could cause them to feel the defensive, making them unable to listen to any other feedback. Bringing up a specific behavior in much more helpful feedback than focusing on personal traits. After all, the employees are more able to change their behavior than the other personality. What is proactive? Don't delay the avoid the providing the feedback and identify the issues of providing the feedback before the become the problem or a hug have a large impact on the company. The sooner you bring up an event or a particular situation, the easier it will be your employee to the process it and find a better way forward. Waiting for days to week to bring up a specific incident make it difficult for any employee to comprehend what happened in that situation and how they can behave the next time a similar situation arises. Given using the descriptive language describing how the implied behavior impact the performance is more useful feedback and then using the vague of board language. Using the descriptive language and the actionable suggestion helps the facilitate the understanding and leads to greater learning. In addition, it will focus the discussion on behavior rather than personal characteristics not given. Using the judgmental language, avoiding the judgmental language will decrease the possibility that our implies will be defensive. Using the non-judgmental feedback also increase the likelihood that this feedback is objective and based on the fact or observable behavior. By coming from the non-judgmental non-judgmental stance, you can broach the subject conservation rather than a lecture based on the accurate and credible information. The feedback should be based on accurate information, provide the very data to the imply and the support a statement and a specific example or observe the behavior. Never use the rumors as example. Avoid this about the citing other implies by name when reference their observation. Recurring feedback should be recurring, should be the performance review each month and ensuring that the manager informal feedback daily as an ongoing practice. Recurring the feedback facilitate a better learning environment than waiting until it's a time to annual review implies in turn and also get the opportunity to bring the concerned throughout as a recurring check. And according to the authors Colin Baker and the leaders.com, employees shouldn't feel the nervous or the fearful when the meeting with their boss to discuss the feedback and improve the communication prevent the relationship from the forming and growing. Consequently, the recurring the feedback can lead to more engaged team to happier employees. What is embedded in the culture fosters an environment and continuous feedback and the professional development. In order to accomplish this, feedback must be the integral part of the job experience, encourage the among the employees and the support within the company. By turning feedback into the continuous two-way and over two-way conversation, implies will feel heard and appropriate rather than the lectured to be corrected. Indeed, they explain how a culture of ongoing feedback foster loyalty amongst the employees and providing the feedback to employees in an effective way help them to feel supported in their roles and the position within the company. Employees who feel the supported by the management are less likely to seek employment and elsewhere. This saves the company time and money spent on hiring the training new employee often. Focus. Feedback should be the channel towards the key area. Managers should choose the specific area that are the most important to the company and provide the feedback that are related to the performance in those areas. Feedback should be also be linked to corporate or departmental goals, and the touching on other topics will just dilute any feedback that really matter to your bottom line. What is guiding this in the information give to the employees should be used to either the confirm or the correct their performance. A simple good job is not the sufficient. Employee need the confirmation that they are on the right path or correction explanation how they can perform the better. It must be the specific and the guide the employee in the most desired direction with the clear descriptive feedback tied to an action plan. When the providing the feedback, managers should also give the actionable feedback to the employee. The employees should be exactly how they increase their performance and what the step they need to take to get there. It is also the manager job to check within the employee periodically and keep the open dialogue about how the action plan is going. The appropriate amount. Too much feedback will overwhelm and confuse the employee, leading to an environment or less optimal learning. They will be less likely to remember the feedback or engage in corrective action. Too little feedback is not the sufficient to elect a change. It is also important to include an appropriate amount of positive comments alongside any critical ones from multiple sources. Feedback from the multiple sources is the more valid than the single sources. Feedback when only one source provides the feedback repeatedly, it can cause the tensions and the message can get lost after the few times. In order to internalize the feedback and elect the change, employees should receive the feedback from multiple sources such as the customer, co-worker, peer and the subordinates. Manager, upper management and objective measures in many firms, graphs and the charts that track individual and group performance are imperative to feedback provided in the workplace. Visual representation and preference can also helpful for the employees and encourage them to either continue in the behavior, to change the behavior, to grow on other time. Feedback should also be the qualitative, such as the accept from the customer survey, and the direct, such as the real-time management feedback from data. Quantity measures performance, such as units sold, days absent, move, money saved, project completed, and customer satisfied are the imperatives to the feedback process. The data should be represented in a meaningful ways, and should be used in concentrate example. Again, the graph and the charts provide the helpful visuals of encouraging the implied growth and the improvement. Constructive feedback comes from the facts rather than the general sentiments or how an employee is performing. Tailored to the recipient, the individual characteristics, level of performance, and the cognitive processing style should influence the type of feedback they receive. Average and below the average performance should be the recessive acceptance, rewards for their performance, high performance, and the respond better to the feedback that enhance their feeling of competence and personal control. Easy to understand. Beating around the bush and complicated the sugar-coated feedback may result in the confusion and the misdirection. It is not delivering effective feedback, but rather the converting what you want to imply to actually hear. Feedback should be easy to understand, and the employee should repeat back the information discussed to ensure that they comprehend the discussion, especially to the implied performance. Managers should not include the factors that are beyond the control of the employees in the feedback process. Before giving the feedback, they should be evaluate whether or not the feedback directly relates to the employee performance, or if it is an extraneous factor that does not warrant a conversation within the practical employee bringing up. Sometimes that's out of the employee control can make them feel overwhelmed and frustrated. Collaboration can allowing the employee to contribute the feedback process and offer the solution will help them to accept the feedback more readily and the self-assess while they might have the cause the specific situation to happen. According to in that feedback should solicit the dialogue, because the part of the challenges of performance and review might be the problem of the implied notions that this evaluation is one-sided. If you do most all the taking implies may feel like you are the scolding them and could respond negatively and to the review. Ask the implies whether imply the coaching and to get them to talk about ways to they can improve and what they like about their jobs. You could also encourage them set their own goals for the project. Employees should discuss their personal problems and express their personal feeling, recognize their own performance shortcoming, and the discussion their job performance objectively during the feedback process. The most effective feedback will contain many or other aforementioned compliments. By providing helpful, timely, and focused feedback, management will encourage the employee to either continue performing well or improve in their performance. Employees will also appreciate the actionable, clear, and the feedback with roadmap of follow-up step to improve their performance in the future. Managers seeking to increase the performance with effective feedback should incorporate these 21 steps into the feedback progress. In turn, the good feedback can lead to significantly more engaged employees and the better performing company and happier customer. Thank you guys. Thank you.